rescue. Pull me into the light, out of the darkness, out of the shadow I was living in. I'm so happy I found you. You make everything bright. I know your goodness, I know your mercy will never end. Your love, oh, it shines from the heart of heaven. Oh, your love is always gonna win. And your love, oh, it's breaking the power of darkness. Love is gonna do it again. Lifting me higher, your love is lifting me higher again. Your love is lifting me higher, your love is lifting me higher, your love is lifting me higher again. And your love, oh, it shines from the heart of heaven. Oh, your love is always gonna win. And your love, oh, it's breaking the power of darkness. Love is gonna do it again. Love is gonna do it again. Love is gonna do it again. Your love is lifting me higher. Your love is lifting me higher. Your love is lifting me higher again. Your love is lifting me higher. Lifting me higher again. You read my heart like an open book. You write my story and call it good. I can't imagine a greater truth. Who is like you? You know what I'm thinking before I ask. You're in my future, you're in my past. It's hard to imagine the way you move. Who is like you? You give my eyes the light to see. You give my 'cause I'll never live a day without you. This is too wonderful, it's incomprehensible. Don't have to imagine what I would do, 'cause I'll never live a day without you. You give my eyes the light to see, you give my lips the words to speak, you give my lungs the air to breathe. Jesus, you are my everything. You give my soul a song to sing, you give my heart a melody, you give it every single beat. Jesus, you are my everything. Oh, Jesus, you are my everything. Jesus, you are my everything. This is too wonderful. Your love is like sand on 1,000 shores. You give and still there's more.
Well, I'll tell you, I love the words of that song because it just reminds us that God just gives and gives and gives and gives. And our posture then is just to receive. I think that's like what God would have for us as we gather together here at Terra Nova. And I am so glad that you came here on a Saturday night here at Terra Nova. My name is Lyle. Again, welcome. And before you have a seat, I got a question for you. It actually connects with something that we're going to be doing next week. It's our birthday weekend. And the question is that do you have a favorite birthday thing? All right, like a favorite food that you like on your birthday, or a location that you like to go to, or an activity that you get to do when people ask you, saying, I'd like this. Okay, so can you think about that? Can you think of something? Okay, so now that you got it, what I'd love to have you do is to turn to a person next to you, find out their name, and then the answer to the question, what's their favorite birthday thing? Well, again, I just wanted to thank you guys for coming out to Terra Nova, and it's just great for us to be together. And if you're here and you're our guest, we just want to say thank you so much for coming. It just means so much to us that you would come out and to give our experience here at Terra Nova a try. So before we get too far into what we're doing, I'd like you to walk you through what you received when you walked in here. It's this program. Why don't you go ahead and pull it out? And you can go ahead and open it up. And as you do, what I'd like you to do is to move towards the back, because the big feature is this Connect card that we have. It's this Perforated Tear Off card. It's this flap. I'm wondering if you can find this, go and just tear this off like I'm doing, and just grab a pen and then just begin to work on this a little bit. Because here's the thing, is we'd really love to hear from everybody, whether you're here, and again, you're a guest, we'd love to hear from you, or if you've been here 2 or 3 times, or maybe like last weekend, Easter weekend was your first time, or you've been here a bunch of months, or you've been here a bunch of years. We just love to hear from everybody, because our vision for Terra Nova, and we think that it's a God-honoring vision, is for us to be just really strong, relationally connected church. And so the Terra Nova Connect card helps us just to be known, and it helps us just to connect with one another and things that are going on in your life. So you can go ahead and just begin to fill us out. And again, if you're a guest, just go ahead and just fill this out and give us as much information as you feel comfortable with. That's cool. And then on the back, you'll notice that we've got a big old space that you can let us know how we can be praying for you. We've got a prayer team that will pray for a request if you fill that out. Also, you just might just give us an update, a word or two, and just how you're doing. We'd love to know that. Or maybe there's a question that you have that's been kind of churning a bit, and you could write that question down, and we'd contact you, and we'd work on that question together. So we'd love to have everybody work on this throughout the course of our time here, and then we'll be able to get this from you towards the end. All right, so now that that's free and you're going to be working on that, you can go ahead and open up the program. You can read about some things that we have going on. Like we had a women's retreat happening. That's going on and coming up real quick. And then in the month of May, we've got Mother's Day coming up. That's going to be huge. And then you might have noticed this big flyer that we have about kids feeding kids. That's kind of a no-miss thing in May. Everybody's going to want to do that. But you've also got some information about what's happening next weekend, and we've got this birthday celebration that's going on. 16 years. We're celebrating our 16-year birthday. I know. So Sweet 16. It's going to be sweet because on Saturday night, we're going to be having a pizza and cake. So that's a Saturday thing. And then on Sunday, there's the barbecue. And so, you're already thinking about how you can be at both of those places. And we'll be watching, right, to see who's double dipping. No, it's fine. You can come to both. No problem at all. That's going to be a great way for us to celebrate with that. Also, this coming weekend, in honor of our birthday, we've got these Made for More t-shirts like the one I'm wearing. You can go ahead and pick up one of these shirts, and we'll give you a really good deal on it. So that'll be great. And then also, one of the things we've done is we've taken all the guesswork out of what to give for a birthday present, because that is oftentimes, something that's a real mystery, right? You get invited to a birthday party. It's like, what do you get? You don't know. But here, if you choose to give something, what we want to do is we want you to give a gift that we can actually then gift on. And it's bringing a canned food item that's going to go to our next door neighbors at South County Outreach, our food pantry that is just across the way here. They do fantastic work here in our community. And what we love to do on our birthday is just to bless other people and other groups like South County Outreach. So that's what we're going to do. So if you want to think about that and bring a can or two, that'd be great. Or if you just want to come, that works as well. We're just really looking forward to having everybody come out next weekend. Going to be a great celebration. I hope you guys are ready for that. If you like to have fun, next weekend is going to be your weekend to be with us, and so that's going to be great. Okay, so that's coming up next weekend, but let's go ahead and move back to this weekend because we're really excited that we get to be together with a series that we started on Easter weekend, and I know that so many of you were here last weekend. And if you weren't, you can pick up real quick, but what we're going to do now is dive into part 2 of the series that we call Enemy Mode and How to Escape It.
So Joe and Sheila moved into their dream home in a neighborhood across from Bob and Natalie. Bob and Natalie have lived in this neighborhood forever. They're very involved in the neighborhood, the HOA. In fact, Natalie's on the board of the HOA. And most of the neighbors know Bob and Natalie, and most of them like Bob and Natalie enough. They're cordial, things are cordial enough. But Bob and Natalie are not necessarily warm, relational people. Most of the conversations have to do with the neighborhood and the HOA, and especially the rules, like the grass being cut or the garbage cans being taken out too soon or left out too long, or approval. Did you get board approval for that change or that upgrade you're doing? Fun stuff like that. So Joe and Sheila have moved into their dream home. They're so excited to be there. They've moved close to their kids and their grandkids. They're really excited. But they begin to experience some friction with Bob and Natalie because Bob and Natalie seem to go about things in a way that's kind of rough around the edges a little bit, and enforcing the rules, the way they do that. So one Saturday morning, there's already this low-lying tension between Joe and Sheila and Bob and Natalie. But one Saturday morning, early in the morning, Joe and Sheila get up and they're pumped, they're excited, they're in a getting stuff done mood. You ever been in one of those moods? And so they get the garage open, and they're going to work in the yard and clean out the garage. And they got the music pumping. They're excited. But the sound of the music coming from across the street actually triggers Bob. And he walks across the street just kind of already his adrenaline pumping, because he's in his mind here. The story he's got is that their loud music is going to wake up his little children who are sleeping in on a Saturday morning. And so he comes across the street, and in a not very relational way, kind of an aggressively passive-aggressive kind of way, he says, "Hey, it's a little early for that loud music, don't you think?" To which Sheila responds, equally non-relational, "I can play my music any way I want to, Bob." Well, this escalates into what is eventually this loud shouting match between Bob and Sheila. Both of them are adrenaline pumping, feeding off of each other's aggression. So I'm like, So much for that, like loud noises waking up your kids part. Like that's apparently out the window, which is kind of what we do when we get in this mode. Like that, we start to act a little bit insane. Well, towards the end of this conflict, Bob says to Sheila, "You better get your idiot husband out here to protect you." Well, that's when Sheila decides she no longer feels safe and she calls 911. Well, Joe comes out and things don't get any better or any more peaceful quickly. And later that day, both couples begin maneuvering against each other. Bob and Natalie began working the street to convince all of the neighbors that Joe and Sheila might be dangerous because after all, Joe is retired military and he might have PTSD and maybe they're not safe in this neighborhood. Meanwhile, Joe and Sheila are researching city ordinances on acceptable decibel levels of music at various times during the day. And a campaign of maneuvering against each other begins, attempting to make the other couple lose, attempting to make maybe, who knows what losing even looks like in this scenario. I don't think it's well thought through, but it maybe make them miserable enough to cease and desist, to back down, to admit they're wrong, or maybe better yet, actually move. Meanwhile, the rest of the neighbors are wishing both of these couples would move, and why can't they just get along? Well, last week we began this new series called Enemy Mode. It's a series about a brain state. So it's physiological. It's a physiological thing that results in a kind of disconnect or kind of detachment, a kind of unhuman disconnect where the right side of my brain goes offline. Now, contrary to the common brain mythology, where the differences between the right brain and the left brain, the differences are actually not that the right brain is artistic and creative and the left brain is stodgy and engineering and mathematical and analytical and so forth. That's actually not true at all, though the myth persists. It's like almost the only thing you see online. In actuality, the right brain is responsible for relational attachments, the assessment of my environment, my surroundings. Is it safe? Is it scary? Are things good? Are things bad? Setting my emotional tone, regulating my emotions, self-soothing, self-quieting, my attunement to others, my ability to read the room, read the relationship, read the moment, the person, group identity. Who are we? Who's my tribe? And how do we behave? What's our identity? And who am I? And how do I behave? All of that is happening in the right brain, most of which is not conscious at all, not actually thought or verbalized in any way in the brain, whereas the left brain is actually where the conscious thought happens. So if you ever thought that, well, your brain is full of your conscious thoughts, it's actually only half true. That's only half true. The left brain is where conscious thought and speech and words and strategies and problem solving and logic and the stories that we tell, especially ourselves. The left brain is sometimes called the verbal logical explainer. It's the one that's telling myself a story about all of this other stuff that I'm experiencing. Now, everything that enters my brain through my five senses passes first through the lower brain and a series of lower brain parts, then up from the back to front of the right side of the brain, and then somewhere in front of my eyeballs, it crosses from the right side to the left, or behind my eyeballs, I should say, from right to left, and then front to back again, kind of like walking aisles in the grocery store. Everything that I ever experiences follows this path through the bottom, out through the right, across, and then back through the left. Which means, here's part of what that means. I experience everything pre-consciously before I ever put words on it or start to tell myself a story about what it means. Enemy mode is a brain state where the right side of the brain, the part of my brain that governs my relationships, that my relational life and my character, who I instinctively am and how I instinctively behave, the part of my brain that processes attachment and connection and joy, that sets my emotional tone, that regulates my mood and emotion and my attunement to others and my ability to respond well and appropriate to them. The right side of my brain, for any number of reasons, and there are a lot of reasons that it could happen, just kind of goes offline. It's just like disengaged, resulting in a kind of relational blindness, or it's a kind of relational detachment, or maybe even a relational out of tunement, like dissonance. And because of that, the people around me are no longer seen by me as fellow human beings of value with a story and so forth, but instead they become objects or obstacles or opponents. And at best, in enemy mode, I'm just trying to get stuff done. I'm focused, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm just trying to get stuff done. And people are either a means to helping me get that stuff done, or they're in my way and impeding me from getting that stuff done, and they're not helping me at all. At best, it's just me trying to get stuff done and not really caring too much about the people around me. At worst, enemy mode becomes very destructive. I can begin to behave hurtfully, even viciously, and destroy relationships and reputations and people and neighborhoods and countries. I can begin to destroy the things around me. And as our HOA story illustrates, there are actually different levels or different types of enemy mode. The first type of enemy mode is just simple enemy mode. Simple enemy mode is just basic relational or human blindness, where it's generally unconscious. I'm not intentional about it. I'm just kind of going about my business with the relational side of my brain, not really engaging with the human beings that are around me, not really seeing them as fellow human beings with value and with a story to be cared about. But instead, I'm just kind of going through my day, right? Maybe I'm grumpy. Maybe I'm just kind of grumpy, I'm in a bad mood, something kind of set me off, or I'm just tending to notice everything that's wrong and everything that's messed up and everything that's bad. I'm annoyed, or maybe I'm stressed out about something that needs to get done, and I'm just focused. I'm just focused right now. Don't interrupt me, and I know the people around me, theoretically, the people driving around me and shopping around me and working around me and living around me, I know, they're not my problem, so to speak. I'm not conscious necessarily in simple enemy mode of them being my enemies. They're just there. They're just objects, maybe a means to an end, a transaction. It's just the cashier, it's just the barista, it's just this person standing in the grocery line next to me, in front of me, behind me. Or worse than objects, they're obstacles. An obstacle is an object that's getting in my way. Now it's in my way, and I need to get over it or get past it or get through it, and I'm frustrated, I'm just annoyed, I'm becoming impatient, all of which, by the way, are emotional signals that I'm actually in enemy mode. And in our HOA story, both couples in the story are in simple enemy mode before anything even happens. In fact, I can just be in ongoing simple enemy mode towards particular individuals for a variety of reasons, where I'm just not inclined to give them grace, I'm not inclined to give them much margin for error, I'm just annoyed before the conversation even starts, and they're already in simple enemy mode before anything even happens. And the truth is, I can actually spend chunks of my day in simple enemy mode. In fact, I look back through my life and I realize that there were seasons in my life where I almost spent my entire life in simple enemy mode. Growing up the way I did, I discovered some of this, what now I know as simple enemy mode, as a type of body armor that I just wore through my life everywhere I went, all day long, every day. And research now shows that our modern, very disconnected, very detached, very transient, highly mobile, and highly individualistic society makes simple enemy mode almost natural, almost necessary for survival, this kind of detachment from all of these strangers all around us. Necessary for survival, maybe, but it's not human. It's not a way to actually be human. And at best, that's all enemy mode is. It's this simple enemy mode, and that's bad enough. That's bad enough relationally, especially when it's the people who are closest to me, who theoretically matter to me. But if I'm already in simple enemy mode, it makes the next two stages much more likely. Stage 2, or the second type of enemy mode, is stupid enemy mode, which is kind of self-explanatory. I mean, the name kind of says what it is. And this is what happens when this cocktail of stress hormones gets triggered and dumped into my bloodstream, often on top of me already being kind of detached and in simple enemy mode, where the amygdala at the base of my brain senses that something's kind of threatening, or there's a threat to my person or to my honor, to my dignity, to my status, to my rights. And there's this fight, flight, or freeze instinct that dumps this cocktail of hormones into my bloodstream that results in the brain circuitry, particularly the right brain, getting overloaded. It's like when you have too many things plugged in your kitchen and then somebody turns on the microwave and everything goes out, and then what do you have to do? You have to go out to the breaker box and like flip it back on and start turning. It's like that type of thing happening in your brain instantaneously, where the higher brain functions actually shut down. The higher brain functions, which by the way, you do not need if you're running from a bear. But you do need if you're resolving a conflict with your neighbor across the street. It's where you're able to hold things in tension, have a wider bandwidth for like data and processing, problem solving, and it's where your filters are located. And when that gets shut down, you and I get stupid. We lack what would normally be something like, I shouldn't say this or be reacting this way. And I say and do things that are not sane. In fact, things that I know I will often regret or work overtime to justify so that I don't feel like I have to regret them. I become kind of destructive. I become hurtful really to my own character and my own self, and certainly to the well-being of the people around me. I am not my best self. I'm literally not in my right mind. Stupid enemy mode is simple enemy mode turned hot, escalated with emotion, and it can happen in an instant. It happened in our HOA story. Bob and Sheila go to this like in a flash, in a nanosecond. The way your brain is created, you're actually wired to respond to the emotional environment around you that you find yourself in. It's why laughter is so contagious. Just hearing it or being around other people who are laughing, your brain responds to that, changes your body into and so laughter is contagious, joy is contagious, but so are other emotions. Fear is contagious, panic is contagious, and aggression is very, very, very contagious. It is almost impossible to be around someone who's in stupid enemy mode and not have that trigger your body physically in response to that adrenaline preparing you for aggression. I don't know if you've ever been around someone who got in a fight and it wasn't at you and you weren't in danger of being in the fight or in a screaming match with somebody else, like maybe the person in line in front of you in the grocery store starts getting into it with the cashier. Have you ever noticed what happens in your body in that instant? You tense up, your heart rate increases, your eyes dilate, your body redirects blood flow to your extremities, and adrenaline gets dumped into your bloodstream, and it happens in a nanosecond, but it takes a long time to dissipate and get out of your blood system. You're created to respond to an emotional environment like that. And that's exactly what happened to Bob and Sheila as they escalate with one another's aggression. The brain is like a natural amplifier, taking in signals and turning them up and bringing them back out. And that's what happened to them. And by the way, it happens to us. It happens to all of us. Enemy mode is contagious. Every type of enemy mode is contagious. Your brain reads and responds to what's happening around it without you even being conscious in your left brain that it's happening. But feeling threatened and sensing aggression isn't the only trigger for stupid enemy mode. It's not just overloaded brain circuitry, but it's also sometimes diminished capacity, like too much alcohol, or not enough sleep, or low blood sugar. Anybody ever do or say something kind of stupid or hurtful after drinking too much? Don't raise your hand. Being overly tired, yeah. Not eating for a long time, like that Snickers commercial, you're not yourself when you're hungry, right? Stubbing your toe, hello. Getting frightened, just anything that immediately overloads that brain circuitry. Simple enemy mode. And then stupid enemy mode, which is enemy mode turned hot. But then there's enemy mode that goes cold, that turns cold. And this is what happened to our HOA couples. After the heat of stupid enemy mode cools, and they turn to maneuvering and machinations and plots and positioning and calculating and recruiting other people to their side. And that brings us to the third type of enemy mode, intelligent enemy mode. Intelligent enemy mode. Because unlike stupid enemy mode, the higher brain functions are on high alert. I mean, I am very attuned, but absent of the right brain's attachment and compassion and empathy, absent of relational sensitivity and human concern. This person is my enemy And they must lose. They must lose and I must win. And intelligent enemy mode can fill the brain with thoughts and machinations and schemes and plans and strategies and arguments and proofs and confirmation bias. I just look for everything I see that confirms what I already, and lawyers and legal loopholes and hired guns and deceptions and fake friendships, all designed to get the other person to lose so that I don't lose. My relational sense in intelligent enemy mode, my relational sense is my ability to listen, to pick up little cues, to notice little things. It is on high alert, but only because I'm looking for what I can use against you. Only because I'm looking for what I can use to hurt you or defeat you. And stupid enemy mode, it burns out quickly. It's like a flash in a pan, but intelligent enemy mode can last for years. It can last for a lifetime. It can turn to hate and bitterness. It becomes indifferent to the pain, sometimes the horrible, horrible pain of other people. It can be caught from others. It can be taught to others. It can be passed from generation to generation, like racism and sexism and ethnic hate and class warfare. And as it did to those HOA couples, it often seeks to side with others and recruit others to our side. But intelligent enemy mode is equally at home in the family room and in the boardroom and in the workplace and in the school and in sales and predatory kinds of relationships, and in a marriage, and in divorce, and in religion, and in the news media. It is everywhere we look. Predatory types of relationships. It's us versus them. It feeds on fear. It always feeds on fear. They must lose, and you have to lose, like somebody has to lose. Even if I burn my own house down to make you lose, I will make you lose. And the key really to maintaining intelligent enemy mode is the absence of empathy. It's the absence of empathy. I need to not feel the pain of the other person or care about the story of the other person. I might be actually very attuned to their pain. I might be on high alert to their pain. I might even be using their pain and certain triggers that I know will cause pain and things that I know will hurt you and memories, and I bring that up and I rub that in again in order to cause you pain. But it's very important that I don't feel that pain myself, that I don't allow myself to actually care about the hurt that I'm causing in you or in others. Enemy mode. It's everywhere. It's everywhere all the time. We are all prone to it. We are all affected by it. The more you understand it, the more you will see it. And the consequences of enemy mode across the human spectrum are devastating, painful, and very, very expensive. So last weekend, on Easter weekend, we began, maybe surprisingly so, saying that enemy mode is actually what Easter is all about. That God looked down on this world that was so dissonant, so detached, so disconnected, so divided, so at odds, so against one another and against him, really. A world where human beings who were created in the image of God with incredible value and esteem so often treat each other as objects, or worse, as obstacles, or even worse than that, as opponents. And God, who we said last week, who runs on love, God who runs on love, who runs on attachment and connection and oneness, that deep level of connection and unity, God who loves and runs on love decided that he was going to do something about it. And the word we used last week was this word right here, reconcile. Reconcile, which means to refriend. To refriend, to reattach, to reconnect, to that there were people who were at odds. There were sides of a ledger that were at odds. There were things that were at odds, and they're brought back into alignment, brought back into agreement. That is actually what God was doing that first Easter weekend. But to understand why this was and still is such a big deal, and why it was such a big deal to this guy named Paul, who we introduced you to last week, why it just blew his mind that this is what God was doing. To understand why it's such a big deal, we actually have to go back to the beginning of the story. The beginning of the story of human beings, a story that began in Paul's mind, in Paul's worldview, a story that began in the beginning with a creator God who made human beings in his image, in his own likeness, to be like him, to be relationally attached, to be one with him and one with each other. And as part of the opening scenes of pages of Hebrew scripture, day 6 of the story is kind of just exploding off the page in the opening scene. It's like these massively broad strokes, like sky and, land and stars and fish, and things are just happening at this rapid rate. And then at the climax of the story, on day 6, the whole thing comes to a halt. And there's this divine conversation. God stops creating for a moment and says, let us make human beings. Let us make mankind in our image. Nothing else has been made in his image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, over the livestock, all the wild animals, over all the creatures that move along the ground. Let's create human beings in our likeness to be our co-rulers over everything that we have made. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them to reflect his image. And we're kind of left to wonder exactly what that phrase means, in his image. We're left to wonder. It's clearly not a physical likeness thing. The story itself contains lots of clues and lots of hints about what it means to be like this creative, powerful, efficacious, good being, what it means really for us to be human in the fullest sense of the word. And part of what it means is clearly relational. It's relational. Part of what it means to be truly human, apparently, is to live in oneness, in profoundly close, open attachment with other human beings, relational attachment with God, with each other, and even with our environment around us. And there's a part of the story, the way the story is told, maybe this is familiar to you. There's this scene where Adam, which actually is not a name in Hebrew. There is no other person ever in this story that's named Adam. It's not a name. It's the word for humanity. It's the word for human. So the human is in the garden. He's been placed in the garden to work and to rule and to exercise responsibility and efficacy, and he's all alone. He's there and he's all alone. And there's this famous line from the story that says, the Lord God said, that's not good. It is not good for the human to be alone. And the line stands out. It jumps out to us in the story because up till now in the story, everything has been nothing but good. Everything's good. Everything's very good. In other words, the very first thing in all of creation to be declared not good is the human being in isolation, disconnected. And the point is that we were made for attachment. We were created for attachment, for oneness. We were born for what psychologists sometimes refer to as bonding with one another. And so this creative, wonderful God forms them by hand. He breathes his own life into them. It's such an intimate moment. And then he places them in this wonderful utopia named Eden. The word means delight. And he gives them work and he gives them responsibility and he makes them his co-rulers over all of creation. And then the scene comes to this very beautiful, intimate, idyllic conclusion. Here's how the scene ends. So this explains why a man leaves his father and mother, is joined or bonded to his wife, and the two actually are united into one. There's oneness in that relationship. And then comes this line. Now Adam, human, and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Naked and unashamed. And it's clear from the story that this is more than just a physical skin thing. This is symbolic of something deeper, something that's truer about them, something beautiful. They're uncovered, they're unguarded, they're fully known, and they know fully there is nothing at all that's hidden between them. And the idea of the story is this is the way life is supposed to be. Metaphorically, keep your clothes on, but this is the way life is supposed to be. The natural state of human life is unguarded and uncovered and unprotected, comfortable in my own skin, comfortable with you in your skin, safe, connected, fully known, and knowing fully. And the picture in these opening scenes is of the humans effortlessly one and attached with God and with each other and with creation around them. Everything is in perfect unity. And in a perfect world, this is all any of us would ever know. There's this sense in the story that this is the way it's supposed to be, that once a long time ago, before the curse, before everything got messed up, this is the way it was. This is the way we were. And maybe, just maybe, this is the way we someday will be again. And in a perfect world, this is all that you and I would ever experience. We were born for this. We were made for attachment, for bonding with one another. In fact, child development experts tell us that we begin to learn how to do this the moment we're born. Like with the second that we're born, we enter this cold, like bright world in a state of shock, vulnerable for the first time, like disconnected or detached from our mothers and terribly alone. And then we're immediately placed in the arms of this loving person who holds us and looks at us and coos at us and smiles and talks softly and looks into our eyes, and our right brains are just lit up. And we turn to this person for love and for warmth and for safety and for comfort. And that baby's brain immediately begins to encode this relationship, to form its first emotional bond, to begin to form attachment before there are ever even any words for it. There's not, the conversation, the things that are being said hardly matter at all, because the left brain actually isn't fully functioning yet for that infant. It's all just right brain. It's right brain, that right brain experience that's so foundational for that baby's development as a human being. It is as essential to that baby as food and warmth and oxygen. And if you ever want to get a tangible sense for this experience of attachment and how it affects an infant, how an infant responds to attachment versus detachment, go on YouTube and search for the still face experiment with Dr. Edward Tronick. You can just write that down somewhere. Go on YouTube. There are a few versions of it. There's a version that's just a few minutes. A number of people have done newer studies, more recent studies, some of them their own studies, of what happens to an infant when there is detachment, when there is a face that is not attaching to them. And neuroscientists believe that attachment is such a primal need for human beings that there is a network of neurons in the brain that are actually dedicated to setting this in motion in the first place. And that same right brain neural network will be used for the rest of that baby's life, for the rest of your life, in forming attachments with other people. And when that happens, and when it happens correctly and it happens appropriately, our brain, particularly our right brain, wires for what are called secure attachments. For secure and deep and good and healthy attachments, we're good at being open with each other. We're good at not hiding and covering up. We're good at trusting. We're good at knowing and being known, at reading others, at having empathy, at sensing where somebody's coming from, and compassion. We're good at boundaries. We're good at emotional regulation and self-quieting. We feel secure in our skin, even when things are a little off in our environment. And imagine like in a perfect world, that's all you would ever have known. That's all you would have ever experienced. Imagine growing up in an environment where all you have ever experienced, from parents, from siblings, from extended family members, and like peers and mentors and total strangers, all you had ever known was love. All you had ever experienced was affirmation and encouragement and acceptance and of course, appropriate boundaries and maybe appropriate levels of challenge and correction when needed, but always in the context of the relationship being more important than the problem, and always in the context of your best interest. And imagine a person, or let's say an entire community, was made up of people who had never been rejected and never rejected anyone else. Where you had never been abandoned, or insulted, or used, or abused, or shunned, or left behind. In other words, all the attachments that you had ever experienced remained forever. They were never, ever broken, not even by death itself. And so you have never, ever learned or experienced the need to protect, to cover, to defend, to guard your soul, to toughen up and grow thicker skin. You've never experienced the need for body armor. And this is a picture of the oneness that God himself experiences and created us to experience with one another. This is life the way it's supposed to be, and life the way it one day will be again. But this is not the life that we were born into. This is not the world that we were born into. And to some degree or another, and for some of us to like, horrible degrees, all of our parents and all of our caregivers had issues. They all had their issues. I do, you do as well. Everybody else we've ever encountered had their own issues too. And so from infancy, we've experienced detachment. We've experienced attachment pain where someone we loved or cared about hurt us. We've experienced rejection and betrayal and insult and threat and harm and abuse and abandonment and trauma. And therefore, we are all prone to protect ourselves from it and to slip into it ourselves in one way or another. And as a result, we just perpetuate it. We perpetuate the problem and we perpetuate the pain. And that's why enemy mode is such a big deal. It's why Jesus again and again and again stressed, hey guys, the most important thing is love. It's actually love. It's attachment. It's engagement. It's care and compassion and attunement with one another. It's love for God with all your heart and all your soul. It's that wide open attached relationship with the one who made you, who loves you. And it's that same kind of thing that you then turn laterally to your neighbor, whoever is in front of you right now. And it's the same thing you turn to one another. You love one another. Jesus says, as I have loved you. And oh yeah, by the way, even your enemy. Even that person who's in enemy mode against you. So, as prevalent as it is, as pervasive as it is, as contagious as enemy mode is, as prone to it as I personally am, how do I escape that and move towards this? How do I get out of enemy mode and move back to the garden, to the kind of human being that I was created to be, that is fully human, right and left brains, like working together? How do I escape enemy mode and help other people too as well? And the first step to escaping enemy mode is to see it. To recognize myself in enemy mode, to recognize when I'm getting into simple enemy mode, I'm just like driving down the street and I'm a little frustrated and I'm impatient, or I'm walking through the store. I'm just not thinking about people. I got stuff I got to get out of there, or I'm walking through my office and I just got things to do, or I'm coming home to my roommates, or I'm coming home to my family and maybe I'm a little bothered, or I'm a little grumpy, or I'm just focused, or I'm just kind of distant. I'm a little detached, or I'm annoyed. I'm barking orders. I'm frustrated, And I recognize that I'm slipping into simple enemy mode just right there. Or I recognize that I'm slipping into stupid enemy mode in a conflict where I feel my body start to tense up. And I feel that adrenaline start to flow, and my filters are gonna turn off. I mean, that's about to happen, and I sense that heating up in me that I'm slipping into stupid enemy mode, or I'm slipping into intelligent enemy mode in an argument. I'm starting to use things that people say against them. Instead of pursuing truth and the accurate view, like a solution that's mutually beneficial, I'm just trying to get you to lose. I'm just trying to defeat you. I'm starting to use things that I notice against you, or these grievances I'm carrying around with me. I notice my own bitterness or my own resentment I'm ruminating on, or I'm plotting and a response to something that somebody else did. And I begin to realize, I'm slipping into enemy mode. I'm slipping into intelligent enemy right there. The first step to escaping it is actually to recognize it, to start recognizing enemy mode when I see it, and especially when I'm in it. Now, to help you with this, here are a few characteristics of your brain on enemy mode. So you can take a picture of this, or there's no real need to memorize anything, but here's your brain on enemy mode. Your brain on enemy mode just sees people as objects, obstacles, and opponents. I'm kind of doing that. Notices what's wrong and bad, and not really what's right or good or to be appreciated, to be grateful for. I'm just kind of seeing things that are problems. Your brain on enemy mode makes the problems more important than the relationship. Instead of keeping the relationship more important than the problem, it assumes that other motives are bad because my attunement, the part of my brain that is actually good at picking up where a person might be coming from, is actually off right now. And so I'm reading the room wrong. I'm reading motives poorly. And other people can see this in you, by the way. They're like, I don't think that's what they meant. Don't tell me. I'm in enemy mode, right? Sees others as not on my side, including people who are trying to get me to see something else, confuses allies as enemies. I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help. You're having a tough relationship with your kid. I'm trying to help. Well, you're not helping me. Wants the enemy to lose. Your brain on enemy mode essentially is not connecting with this person in front of me, caring about their story, caring about their pain as a fellow human being with value. It's just a basic relational blindness. Or here's another way to look at it. So another way to look at how do I know if I'm in enemy mode are some emotional cues. So here's some emotional cues. You might be in enemy mode if what you're feeling is angry, frustrated, impatient, stressed. I'm just kind of stressed out, hurried, focused. I'm just focused, triggered, fed up, disgusted, anxious, resentful. I keep telling myself a story about this person and I'm in enemy mode with them. Tense when you feel your body tense up. Grumpy, a very good sign of enemy mode. Threatened, uninterested. I'm just detached. I'm just not interested in you. I'm not interested in what you're saying. Bitter, malicious, vindictive, furious, of course, hot, stupid enemy mode, just annoyed, defensive, self-justifying, telling myself a story, ungrateful, distracted, all signs that you not necessarily are in enemy mode, but that you just might be in enemy mode. And the first step to escaping enemy mode is just noticing it. Just starting to notice it, just recognizing it as it happens. So this week, your homework this week is to simply notice it. Just recognize it. You don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to tell anybody else or be honest about it. Your first step is just through this week, just start to notice it. Just start to recognize when you see it in other people. Don't tell you are not well trained enough to tell anybody else they're in enemy mode. So don't do that. Don't try that. You're just noticing it. You're like, oh, they're in enemy mode right now. Oh, I'm in enemy mode. Just noticing it, noticing when you see it, and especially when you're in it. Rather than telling yourself a story to justify it and how you're not in enemy mode, just kind of admit it to yourself, not necessarily to anybody else. You don't have to be honest with anybody else, but just be honest with yourself. I think I'm in enemy mode right now. Now, of course, recognizing enemy mode is essential to escaping it and to help other people escape it and to learning how to live whole-brained, like fully human lives, my best self. Recognizing it is essential, but it's only the first step. This is the first step. So it's like, okay, so I'm in enemy mode. Now what? Maybe I like it. Maybe I like it. Maybe I feel like I should be in enemy mode. Or maybe I don't like it. Maybe I don't like it at all. It feels terrible, but I'm stuck. Okay, so I see that I'm in enemy mode. The real question is, what do I do about that? Like, how can I escape enemy mode? That's the question, isn't it? I mean, that's the real question. And the answer is simply this. Come back next week for part 3 of the series. That is where we'll pick it up next week with this story that Jesus tells that is so incredibly good. And of course, we're having this pizza party after the Saturday 5. We're doing the barbecue after both Sunday services. Bring some canned goods or some dried goods if you want to for our next door neighbors. Our new t-shirt goes on sale. It's going to be a great weekend as our series continues. Now, in a moment, I want to pray for us. I want to pray over you before we go. Before we do that, I just want to remind you about that Connect card that Lyle was telling you about before. We'd love to get that from you on your way out. Our guest services teams will have that at the door and love to hear from you. By the way, if you're our guest, thank you so much for spending part of a weekend with us, we'd love to get to know you better. If you feel comfortable just as much about yourself as you feel comfortable sharing, drop that in those offering baskets on the way out. And of course, you can drop your offering envelopes. If you're part of the Terra Nova family, if you're a guest, we don't want you to feel any pressure to give. You just need to know you're sitting in a room full of some of the most generous people in Orange County, because we believe that generosity changes the world. The generosity actually flips the switch on enemy mode, and it really does. And so you can do all of that on your way out. But let me pray for us before we leave. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for loving us at our worst, for loving us so much, in fact, loving this whole messed up world so much that you would break the ice, that you would come all the way to us in order to refriend and reconcile and restore attachment and relationship with you. So we want to open ourselves up to that, to the possibility of that kind of closeness with you, and also to your power and your grace that really can change us and transform us from the inside out to fashion us into the people that you created us to be. We're going to lean into that. We're going to trust that's true. We're going to ask you for that grace and power. And I pray for every single one of us as we head into this week, myself definitely included, that you would give us the self-awareness, the eyes to see ourselves, to sense ourselves as we are detaching and slipping into enemy mode. I pray that you give every single one of us just the ears to hear what we needed to hear today, the wisdom to know how to apply it and bring it into our lives, and the grace and the power to take our next steps. And I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We will see you back next weekend for the birthday party and part 3 of our series, Enemy Mode. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Thanks for being here.